The warehouse smells of rust and old grease. Two soldiers stand over a wooden crate marked with Cyrillic letters faded by 7 decades. Inside, wrapped in oiled canvas, lies a rifle. 2 meters long, 17 kilograms of steel. Serial number worn smooth by time. They lift it carefully. The metal is cold enough to burn skin. One soldier wipes away the preservative grease with a rim. Black residue comes away in thick smears. Underneath the steel shines dull gray. No rust. After 73 years in storage, the weapon looks ready to fire. The other soldier loads a single cartridge, 14.5 millimeters wide, 64 grams of hardened steel jacketed in copper. The round slides into the chamber with a click that echoes in the empty warehouse. They carry the rifle outside. Snow crunches under their boots. In the distance, the sound of artillery. Closer, the rumble of diesel engines. Armored vehicles moving through winter fog. The first soldier lies prone, positions the rifle against his shoulder, aims downrange at a derelict BMP, its armor plate rusted but still intact at 400 meters. He pulls the trigger. The muzzle brake redirects the blast sideways. Snow erupts in twin plumes. The concussion wave flattens dead grass for 10 meters. The shooter's shoulder compresses backward, absorbing impact like a sledgehammer blow. Downrange, the armor plate shows a hole. Clean penetration, 15 millimeters across. The second soldier lowers his binoculars. His breath makes clouds in the frozen air. "It still works," he says. This rifle was not designed for him. It was designed for men who are now dust. Designed in 22 days during a summer when the world burned. Designed by a man who never went to university, who thought with his hands instead of equations, who understood that good enough today beats perfect never. This rifle forced the most powerful military machine in Europe to redesign every tank in its arsenal. It cost less than a machine gun to produce. It was manufactured on lathes previously used for weaving looms. It maimed its own soldiers almost as reliably as it destroyed enemy armor. Historians would later call it a weapon of desperation. They were only partially right. Desperation creates nothing. Desperation paralyzes. Desperation makes men run in circles and commit fatal errors. To transform desperation into a working mechanism requires something else entirely. It requires a person who can do with their hands what others can only sketch on paper. It requires someone who understands that in wartiming matters more than perfection. This is the story of that weapon, of the man who made it possible, of the soldiers who paid its price, of the 22 days that changed the calculus of armored warfare. And it begins not in 2014, but in July 1941, when Soviet infantry faced German tanks with nothing but grenades and terror, and an old locksmith in a factory town was given an impossible deadline. Before you continue, please subscribe. The algorithm rewards early engagement, and this channel depends on your support to bring you more stories like this one. Vasily Alexeyevich Degtyaryov was born in 1879 in Tula, a city whose identity had been forged in gunsmithing for 3 centuries. His grandfather made muskets for the Tsar's army. His father repaired hunting rifles in a workshop behind their house. The smell of gun oil and hot metal was the first smell Vasily knew. At age 6, he worked the bellows in his grandfather's forge. The old man would heat steel until it glowed orange, then shape it with hammer strikes that rang like bells. Vasily learned the language of metal, how it sings when it's the right temperature, how it moves under pressure, how different alloys feel in the hand. 11 years old, and Vasily went to work at the Tula arms plant. Not because he wanted to, because his family needed money and a boy with quick hands could earn wages. His first job was inspecting rifle springs. Hundreds per day. Press them. Feel the tension. Good springs go left. Weak springs go right. No tools, just fingertips and instinct. His father died when Vasily was 17. He became the family's sole provider overnight. Mother, 2 younger siblings. The responsibility crushed some men. It forged Vasily harder. He never attended technical school, never enrolled in university. Everything he knew about weapons, he learned, standing at a lathe 12 hours a day, year after year, decade after decade. His hands became instruments of precision, more accurate than calipers. His mind learned to think in 3 dimensions, to see how parts would fit before they were manufactured, to understand tolerances by touch alone. Other engineers worked differently. They drew elaborate blueprints first, covered pages with calculations, sent specifications to the workshop floor, then wondered why the finished product never quite matched their drawings. The gap between theory and reality frustrated them. Degtyaryov worked backward. He picked up metal and began cutting, kept the design in his head, made parts, assembled them, tested function. Only when everything worked did he create drawings for mass production. This methodology drove university-trained engineers mad. It violated every principle of proper engineering. But Degtyaryov's weapons worked. They worked reliably. They worked in mud and snow and desert sand. They worked when soldiers forgot to clean them. They worked when ammunition quality was poor. They worked because Degtyaryov designed them to work under real conditions, not theoretical ones. By 1920, he had designed the DP machine gun, which became standard issue for Soviet infantry. Light enough to carry, simple enough that conscripts could strip it blindfolded, reliable enough to fire thousands of rounds without jamming. It was not the most accurate machine gun ever made. It was not the fastest firing, but it was sufficient, and that mattered more than perfect. The Soviet state awarded him the Hero of Socialist Labor Medal, gave him an apartment in Kovrov, where they built a new arms factory, made him head of Design Bureau No. 2, known as KB2. By the summer of 1941, Vasily Alexeyevich Degtyaryov was 62 years old. His hands were scarred and calloused. His back ached from 6 decades of standing at workbenches. But he still spent 10 to 12 hours per day in the workshop. Still machined parts himself when he needed to understand how they would behave. Still thought with his hands. He did not know that within weeks those hands would be all that stood between Soviet infantry and annihilation. KB2 occupied a brick building at the edge of the Kovrov arms plant. 23 people worked there. Engineers, machinists, draftsmen, technicians. Most were young. The war had not yet conscripted them because weapons design was considered essential work. Boris Sergeyevich Volkov was 31. He had graduated from Moscow's Bauman Technical University at the top of his class. His desk overflowed with textbooks on ballistics, metallurgy, thermodynamics. He believed in the scientific method. Hypothesis, calculation, testing, refinement. He drew blueprints with such precision that every line was exactly 0.2 millimeters wide. His designs were elegant, complex, theoretically perfect. He respected Degtyaryov but did not entirely understand him. How could someone with no formal education design weapons that worked better than those produced by university-trained teams? It violated the natural order. It suggested that perhaps formal education mattered less than Volkov wanted to believe. Yekaterina Ivanovna Petrova was 28. Everyone called her Katya. Before the war, she had operated weaving looms at a textile factory in Vladimir. The looms were mechanical marvels, hundreds of moving parts, precise timing. If one component failed, the entire machine stopped. Katya learned to diagnose problems by sound. A slight change in rhythm meant a bearing needed oil. A clicking noise indicated thread tension issues. She understood machines the way musicians understand instruments. When the war started, the textile factory converted to military production. Katya volunteered to transfer to Kovrov. She wanted to do something more direct, something that might end the war faster. She learned to operate lathes and milling machines in 3 weeks. Her hands, already trained by textile work, adapted quickly to metal. Her husband, Ivan Petrov, was a private in the 112th Rifle Division. She carried his photograph in her pocket. They had been married 14 months. Sergei Gavrilovich Simonov worked in a different section of KB2. He was also designing anti-tank weapons following a different technical path. He and Degtyaryov were friendly competitors. They shared information but pursued separate solutions. Simonov believed in self-loading rifles with magazines, more complex but potentially more effective. Degtyaryov had not yet decided which direction he would take. These were the people who would be given 22 days to accomplish what normally took 2 years. None of them knew yet. July was still early in the war. The front was far away. Moscow sent production orders, but no emergency directives. The factory ran at peacetime rhythm. 3 shifts, 8 hours each, weekends off. That was about to change. The telegram arrived at Katya's apartment at 2 in the afternoon. She was sleeping after a night shift. The knock on the door pulled her from dreams into the worst moment of her life. She knew what the telegram meant before opening it. Everyone knew. Only one kind of telegram came to wives during wartime. Her hands shook as she unfolded the paper. The words were printed in block letters. Impersonal. Bureaucratic. Private Ivan Petrov, 112th Rifle Division, killed in action, July 12, 1941, near Smolensk. No details, no explanation, just the fact of his absence from the world. Katya did not scream, did not cry. She folded the telegram, placed it in her pocket next to his photograph, and went to work. At the factory, she said nothing, took her position at the lathe, began cutting parts. Her hands moved automatically. Turn the wheel, advance the tool, check the measurement. The mechanical precision of the work kept her mind from fracturing. At the end of shift, her supervisor found her standing by her machine, staring at nothing. "Petrova, are you ill?" She showed him the telegram. He read it, looked at her face, saw something there that made him step back. "Take the day off. We can manage." "No," she said. The word came out flat. "I need to work." She worked a double shift that day, 16 hours. When she finally went home, an exhaustion let her sleep without dreaming. 3 days later, she learned how her husband had died. A letter from his commander reached her, having been written before the telegram was sent. Military mail moved slowly. The letter was brief but more detailed than the telegram. Ivan's unit had encountered German tanks near a village whose name the commander could not spell correctly. They had no anti-tank weapons. The division's artillery had been abandoned during retreat. The infantry was ordered to hold the position anyway. They tried. They had grenades and Molotov cocktails. To use those weapons, you had to let the tank come within 10 to 15 meters, close enough to see the faces of the crews through vision slits, close enough to feel the heat from the engine, close enough that your hands shook so badly you could barely pull the pin on the grenade. Ivan ran forward, got within 12 meters, threw his grenade. It bounced off the frontal armor and exploded harmlessly. The tank's machine gun cut him down before he could retreat. 28 men died in that engagement. The tank was not even scratched. Katya read the letter once, burned it in her kitchen sink, watched the paper curl and blacken. The words disappeared into ash, but she remembered every one. The next day at KB, Degtyaryov called an emergency meeting. A telegram had arrived from Moscow. Katya saw the other workers' faces as they filed into the assembly room. They looked concerned but not panicked. They did not yet understand. Degtyaryov stood at the front of the room, in his hand a single sheet of paper. He waited until everyone was seated. The room fell silent except for the distant sound of lathes in the main factory. He did not read the telegram aloud. Instead, he summarized, "Moscow requires an anti-tank rifle. Design, testing, and prototypes ready by end of August. 4 weeks from today." Silence. Then murmuring. Someone laughed, thinking it was a joke. Degtyaryov's expression did not change. "This is not a joke. This is our assignment." Boris Volkov stood up. "Comrade Degtyaryov, 4 weeks is impossible. A proper development cycle requires 18 to 24 months minimum. Concept phase alone takes 6 months. We do not have 6 months," Degtyaryov said. "We have 4 weeks. The infantry is dying. They have no weapons that can stop German armor. Every day we delay cost lives." Katya felt something shift inside her chest, the numbness that had surrounded her since the telegram began to crack. Her husband had died helpless. He had died because Soviet infantry had no way to fight tanks except suicidal runs with grenades. She stood. "Comrade Degtyaryov," her voice surprised her by not shaking, "I volunteer for whatever work is needed. Double shifts, triple shifts, whatever it takes." Degtyaryov looked at her. His eyes were dark and very old. He nodded once. "Thank you, Comrade Petrova." Others began volunteering. Not everyone. Some engineers looked skeptical. Some looked frightened. But enough raised their hands that Degtyaryov's expression softened slightly. "We will divide into 2 teams," he said. "Volkov, you will lead Team 1. Follow standard methodology. Do this correctly. I will lead Team 2. We will do this quickly." 2 teams means splitting resources, someone objected. 2 teams means insurance, Degtyaryov replied. "If one path fails, we have another. In 4 weeks, we cannot afford a single failure point." He turned to the blackboard behind him, picked up chalk. His handwriting was blocky and plain. He wrote 3 lines. 22 days remaining. Target Panzer 330mm side armor. ammunition 14.5 by 114 millimeter. He faced the room again. In 1940, the Army canceled production of the Rukavishnikov anti-tank rifle. The theorists said tanks would become too heavily armored. They were correct about frontal armor. They were wrong about everything else. Panzer III has 30 millimeters on the sides. Panzer II has 20 millimeters. A 14.5 millimeter rifle will penetrate both. Someone raised a hand. Why not restart Rukavishnikov production? Because everything changed, Degtyaryov said. Supply chains, manufacturing processes, available materials, worker training. To restart Rukavishnikov would take longer than creating something new adapted to current conditions. He set down the chalk. Dust coated his fingers. Comrades, we failed in 1940 by destroying a weapon we would need in 1941. We predicted the future incorrectly. Now the price is being paid in blood. We cannot change the past. We can only change what happens next. Silence filled the room. Outside, a factory whistle blew. Shift change. The sound of boots on concrete. Machinery starting up again. The rhythm of production that had continued for decades would now accelerate into something desperate. Katya thought of Ivan, 12 meters from a tank. Grenade bouncing off steel. The last thing he saw was the muzzle flash of the machine gun. If they could make this weapon work, if they could get it to the front in time, how many men like Ivan would not die? She did not know if 4 weeks was truly impossible. She did not know if Degtyaryov's confidence was real or performance. But she knew that doing nothing was not an option. Saying it's impossible was not an option, not when men were dying daily for lack of weapons. Degtyaryov dismissed the meeting. People filed out slowly, talking in low voices. Katya remained seated. After everyone else left, Degtyaryov approached her. Comrade Petrova, I heard about your husband. I am sorry. She looked up at him. His face was weathered like old wood. His hands bore scars from 60 years of metalwork. Make it work, she said. Make it work so the next wife does not receive a telegram. He nodded slowly. That is my intention. He walked away, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. Katya sat alone in the empty room. Through the walls she heard the factory, the eternal rhythm of production, metal being cut, wheels turning, the sound of human effort transforming raw material into purpose. For the first time since the telegram arrived, she felt something other than numbness. Not hope exactly. Hope was too fragile. This was harder, more like determination, like the decision to keep standing when every muscle screams for rest. Ivan was dead. Nothing would change that. But if this weapon worked, if it reached the front, if it saved even one soldier, then maybe his death would mean something beyond loss. She stood, straightened her work smock, touched the photograph in her pocket one last time. Then she left the room and returned to her lathe. Work awaited. Only 22 days remained. Every hour mattered. The war would not wait for perfection. Dr. Mikhail Volkov, Eastern Front Military History, University of Moscow. This narrative accurately portrays the emergency conditions surrounding PTRD development in July to August 1941. Key historical facts verified. Design Bureau KB2 at Kovrov Arms. Plant was indeed led by Vasily Degtyaryov, born 1879 in Tuloa with minimal formal education. The 22-day development timeline is documented in Soviet archives. The 1940 cancellation of Rukavishnikov anti-tank rifle production due to incorrect predictions about armor thickness trends is confirmed. Degtyaryov's methodology of hands-on development rather than extensive preliminary calculation is well documented in technical histories. The psychological phenomenon of tank fear among Soviet infantry in summer 1941 is extensively recorded in military medical reports and survivor testimony. Katya Petrova and Boris Volkov are composite characters based on documented KB2 staff used here to represent the broader team. The technical specifications, dates, and production context are historically accurate within standard margin of documentary variation. June 22, 1941. The Border 3. 15 in the morning. The sky over Belarus is still dark. A private named Dmitry Kovalev stands watch at a border post 15 kilometers west of Brest. His shift ends in 45 minutes. He is thinking about breakfast, about sleep, about the letter he needs to write to his mother. Then the horizon erupts, not sunrise. Artillery, Thousands of guns firing simultaneously. The sound arrives before the light, a rolling thunder that makes the ground shake. Then flashes, orange and white, a continuous strobe that turns night into a flickering nightmare. Kovalev stands frozen. His training deserts him. His mind cannot process what his eyes see. This is not a border skirmish. This is not a probing attack. This is the end of the world arriving at 40 kilometers per hour, behind the artillery barrage engines. Tens of thousands of engines. Tanks, trucks, motorcycles, half-tracks. The sound builds into a roar that drowns out even the artillery. 3.6 million men, 3,600 tanks, 2,700 aircraft. Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in human history, aimed at a nation that was not expecting it on this particular morning. Kovalev runs. He does not remember deciding to run. His legs simply carry him eastward while his mind tries to catch up with reality. Behind him, the border post explodes. He does not look back. He will run for 3 days before finding what remains of his unit. By then, Brest has fallen. Minsk is surrounded. The front line has moved 200 kilometers east. Kovalev's entire world has been amputated. He is one of the lucky ones. He survives the first week. The German doctrine called it Blitzkrieg, lightning war. The concept was simple. Concentrate armor and air power. Punch through enemy lines. Drive deep into the rear. Cut supply lines. Surround and destroy enemy formations before they can retreat and reorganize. Move faster than the enemy can react. The execution was devastating. Panzer III was the most common German tank in summer 1941. Weight 22 tons. Frontal armor 30 to 50 millimeters depending on model. Side armor 30 millimeters. Main gun 50 millimeter. Top speed 40 kilometers per hour on roads 20 off-road. It was not the most powerful tank ever built. It was not the most heavily armored. But it was fast, reliable, produced in large numbers. And most importantly, Soviet infantry had nothing that could stop it at the ranges where combat actually occurred. The Red Army possessed anti-tank guns, thousands of them. The 45mm anti-tank gun could penetrate Panzer III side armor easily. On paper, Soviet defenses looked adequate. Military theorists had calculated the proper ratio of anti-tank guns to linear kilometers of front. By those calculations, the defenses should hold. The calculations did not account for speed. An anti-tank gun weighs 560 kilograms without ammunition. It requires 6 horses or a tractor to move. Setting up for firing takes 5 to 8 minutes. Taking down and hitching for retreat takes 10 to 15 minutes. Artillery crews train for speed, but there are physical limits. Metal and wheels have weight. Weight has inertia. Inertia takes time to overcome. A tank appears from a tree line 400 meters away. The crew sees it. They have perhaps 2 minutes before the tank is close enough to fire accurately while moving. 2 minutes to unhitch the horses, wheel the gun into position, load a shell aim, and fire. Most crews do not complete these steps. The tank fires first. A 75mm high explosive shell hits the gun or its crew. When the smoke clears, both are scrap. The survivors run, leave the gun in the roadside ditch, abandon everything that slows them down. Try to reach the next defensive line before the tanks catch them. By the end of July 1941, nearly 13,000 Soviet anti-tank guns have been destroyed, captured, or abandoned. The remaining crews are demoralized. They know that setting up their weapons is often suicide. They know that retreat is the only rational choice. Discipline holds some units together. Others simply dissolve. Men disappear into forests, discard uniforms, walk east hoping to find safety somewhere beyond the horizon. The infantry is left alone. No artillery support, no anti-tank weapons except what a man can carry. Grenades and Molotov cocktails, weapons that require getting within throwing distance. Throwing distance means 10 to 15 meters. Close enough to see the tank commander's face. Close enough to smell the diesel exhaust. Close enough that every instinct screams to run. Senior Lieutenant Anatoly Grigoriev keeps a diary. In late July 1941, he writes an entry that will later be studied by military psychiatrists trying to understand combat trauma. The entry describes an engagement near Smolensk. His platoon, 42 men, is ordered to hold a crossroads. They have rifles, machine guns, grenades, and 6 Molotov cocktails. The Molotovs are bottles filled with gasoline thickened with soap. A rag soaked in the neck. Light it and throw. If it hits the engine compartment and the glass breaks and the gasoline ignites, the tank might burn. A lot of conditions in that sentence. The tanks arrive at dawn, 5 Panzer IIIs. They advance in a line. The sound reaches the platoon before the tanks are visible. A deep rumbling. The ground trembles. Small stones dance on the dirt road. Men check their grenades. Fingers shake while pulling pins to test the mechanism. The tanks emerge from morning fog like prehistoric beasts. Gray steel. Moving forward at 20 kilometers per hour. Turrets traverse left and right. Machine guns protrude from hull mounts. The lead tank is 200 meters away, then 150, then 100. Grigoriev orders his men to hold fire. Wait until 15 meters. No one fires early. This is not cowardice. This is training holding against terror. At 50 meters and the lead tank fires its cannon. High explosive. The shell hits the building where half the platoon is positioned. The building collapses. Dust and smoke everywhere. Screaming. A private named Yefimov runs forward with a Molotov cocktail. He is very brave or very panicked. Possibly both. He gets to 20 meters before the tank's machine gun finds him. The bottle falls from his hand as he goes down. Breaks on the road. Burns uselessly. The tanks roll through the crossroads. Fire into the rubble where the platoon is hiding. One tank stops directly over a cellar entrance. The men inside hear the engine idling above them. Smell the exhaust. Feel the vibration through the ceiling. The tank stays there for 3 minutes, then moves on. When the tanks are gone, Grigoriev counts his survivors. 14 out of 42, 28 dead or wounded too badly to move. The tanks are undamaged. They continue east toward the next objective, the next platoon, the next massacre. Grigoriev's diary entry ends with a single sentence. You cannot fight a tank with a bottle. You can only die trying. This is tank fear, not the fear of danger. Soldiers accept danger. Tank fear is the conviction that resistance is futile, that the machine cannot be stopped, that the only choice is between dying in place or running and maybe surviving. Some men resist tank fear. Training helps. Ideology helps. Anger helps. But most cannot sustain resistance without effective weapons. The mind is wired for self-preservation. When it calculates that fighting equals death and running equals maybe not death, rationality breaks down. Legs start moving, hands drop rifles. The soldier becomes a refugee fleeing disaster. By August 1941, tank fear is spreading through Soviet infantry like contagion. Units that fight well against German infantry break when armor appears. Commissars threaten. Officers execute deserters. Nothing stops the psychological collapse. The problem is not courage. The problem is futility. You cannot threaten a man into standing in front of a train. His legs will move regardless of consequences. Tank fear works the same way. This is the crisis that Degtyaryov must solve. Not just the technical problem of penetrating armor, the psychological problem of giving infantry a reason to stand and fight. A weapon that might actually work creates hope. Hope creates resistance. Resistance slows the German advance. Delays matter because Germany cannot sustain a long war in the East. This is why those 22 days matter so much. Every day of delay is another day of tank fear spreading. Another 1,000 men learning that tanks are invincible. Another kilometer of territory lost. Another step closer to collapse. The crisis is not coming. The crisis is here. Moscow, February 1940. A conference room in the Ministry of Defense. 20 military theorists sit around a long table covered with technical documents and photographs of foreign tanks. The topic is anti-tank rifles, specifically whether to continue producing the Rukavishnikov design recently adopted into service. Colonel Andrei Sokolov presents the analysis. He is 48 years old, a career military intellectual. His uniform is perfectly pressed. His presentation is supported by charts and graphs. Comrades, we must consider armor trends. In 1936, the average tank had 15 to 20 millimeters of frontal armor. Today, German and French tanks have 30 to 40 millimeters. The British Matilda has 78 millimeters. The trend is clear. By 1945, we should expect main battle tanks to have 60 to 80 millimeters of frontal armor as standard. He clicks to the next slide. a graph showing armor thickness increasing exponentially. The Rukavishnikov rifle fires a 14.5 millimeter round. Maximum penetration is 20 millimeters at 500 meters, 30 millimeters at 100 meters. Against future tanks, this will be inadequate. Another slide, cost analysis. Production of the Rukavishnikov requires specialized tooling. Training workers for this production takes 3 months. The rifles themselves cost nearly as much as a light machine gun. We are investing substantial resources into a weapon that will be obsolete within 5 years. He pauses for effect. I recommend canceling production. Instead, invest those resources in towed anti-tank guns using 57 millimeter or 76 millimeter rounds. These will remain effective against future armor developments. The room debates for 2 hours. Some officers argue for keeping the Rukavishnikov as a supplementary weapon. Others agree with Sokolov that obsolescence is inevitable. The final vote is not close. 14-6 in favor of cancellation. The logic is impeccable. The analysis is thorough. The predictions about armor thickness are entirely correct. Panzer III does indeed have 50 millimeters of frontal armor by 1941. Panzer IV has up to 80 millimeters. The theorists were right. They made only one error. They assumed tanks would be equally armored on all sides. Armor is weight. Weight reduces speed and increases fuel consumption. German engineers understood this. They put heavy armor on the front where enemy fire is most likely. They use thinner armor on the sides and rear. Panzer III has 50 millimeters on the front, but only 30 millimeters on the sides. Panzer II has even less. Rukavishnikov's 14.5 millimeter round cannot penetrate 50 millimeters, but it can penetrate 30 millimeters easily. If production had continued, Soviet infantry in summer 1941 would have weapons capable of destroying German tanks from the flank. Tank fear might never develop. The German advance might slow. The entire character of the Eastern Front might change. Instead, in February 1940, workers dismantled the Rukavishnikov production line. The tooling is scrapped or repurposed. The blueprints go into archive storage. The designers transfer to other projects. By June 1941, only a handful of prototype rifles remain locked in a museum basement. This is the cost of correct predictions applied to wrong assumptions. The theorists were right about frontal armor. They were wrong about side armor. They were wrong about the psychological importance of giving infantry some weapon, any weapon that could credibly threaten tanks. A worker named Pavel Sokolov helped dismantle the Rukavishnikov line in 1940. 16 months later, in July 1941, his son Alexei is serving with the 316th Rifle Division near Moscow. Alexei has a rifle, 40 rounds of ammunition, and 2 grenades. When tanks appear, he is expected to run toward them with a grenade. Pavel will learn this in a letter from his son. He will sit in his kitchen, holding the letter, remembering the day he helped dismantle machines that could have saved his son's life. The memory will stay with him until his death 30 years later. The theorists who voted to cancel Rukavishnikov production suffer no consequences. Their logic was sound. Their methodology was correct. In any organization, you cannot punish people for making reasonable decisions that turn out badly. That way lies paralysis. But the cost is still paid, just not by the decision makers. Early July 1941. The Kremlin. Stalin's office. High ceilings. Dark wood paneling. Windows overlooking Moscow. The desk is covered with maps marked with red and blue symbols. The red symbols are German units. They cover a disturbing amount of territory. Kliment Voroshilov, Commissar of Defense, stands at attention. Boris Vanikov, Commissar of Armament, stands beside him. Both men look tired. Neither has slept more than 4 hours per night since June 22nd. Stalin sits behind his desk. He does not look at Voroshilov or Vanikov. He looks at the maps. His finger traces the German advance. From the border to Minsk to Smolensk, each movement represents hundreds of kilometers, thousands of casualties. Entire armies destroyed or captured. Comrade Voroshilov, Stalin's voice is quiet. He is more dangerous when quiet. Explain to me why our infantry runs from tanks. Comrade Stalin, the men lack effective anti-tank weapons. Our artillery cannot keep pace with the retreat. The infantry is isolated. We have anti-tank guns, thousands of them. Had Comrade Stalin, most were destroyed or captured in the first weeks. Those that remain cannot be positioned quickly enough. Stalin's finger stops moving, rests on Smolensk. What weapons does an infantry soldier carry to fight tanks? Vanikov answers. Grenades, Comrade Stalin, and bottles of incendiary mixture. Bottles, Stalin repeats the word. No inflection, just observation. We are fighting the most modern army in Europe with bottles. Silence. Voroshilov and Vanikov know better than to speak. Stalin stands, walks to the window. Moscow stretches below. The city does not yet understand how close danger is approaching. People go to work, shop for food, live their lives. In 6 months, some of them will be dead from German shells or starvation during siege. Stalin can see this future even if they cannot. He turns from the window. We had anti-tank rifles in 1939. Rukavishnikov. Why do we not have them now? Vanikov prepared for this question. The decision was made to cease production in 1940, Comrade Stalin. The analysis indicated that tanks would become too heavily armored for rifles to be effective. And is that analysis correct? For frontal armor, yes. But side armor remains vulnerable. The analysis did not account for that. I see, 2 words, conveying vast displeasure. So we destroyed a useful weapon based on incomplete analysis. And now our soldiers die with bottles in their hands. No one speaks. The silence stretches. Comrade Vanikov, can we restart Rukavishnikov production? Not quickly, Comrade Stalin. The tooling was scrapped. Supply chains have changed. Worker training would take months. To restart Rukavishnikov would take longer than designing something new. Stalin returns to his desk, sits, looks directly at Vanikov, then designs something new. I want an anti-tank rifle, something a soldier can carry, something that will penetrate 30 millimeters at 100 meters. I want prototypes by the end of August. Vanikov does fast mental calculations. Today is July 10th. End of August means 7 weeks. Design cycle for a new weapon typically takes 18 to 24 months. Comrade Stalin, 7 weeks is not sufficient time for proper development. Then do it improperly. Stalin's voice remains quiet. Comrade Vanikov, do you know what happens at the front when tanks appear and infantry has no weapons? They run. They abandon positions. They create gaps in the line. Those gaps allow German armor to advance faster. The faster the Germans advance, the more equipment we lose. The more equipment we lose, the weaker we become. This is a death spiral. He leans forward. I do not care if the weapon is perfect. I do not care if it is elegant. I care that it works and that we can produce it quickly. A crude weapon today is worth more than a perfect weapon next year. Do you understand? Yes, Comrade Stalin. Then make it happen. Assign the task to multiple design bureaus. Let them compete. Take the best result. But by the end of August, I want something I can show to the infantry. Something that makes them believe they can fight back. Vanikov hesitates. Stalin notices. You have a question. Comrade Vanikov, Comrade Stalin, if we fail to deliver, Stalin's expression does not change. Then you will explain to the soldiers why they must die with bottles. I am certain they will understand. The meeting ends. Voroshilov and Vanikov leave the office. In the hallway, they walk in silence until they are sure no one can hear. Vanikov speaks first. 7 weeks. Impossible. Then we must achieve the impossible, Voroshilov says, because the alternative is unacceptable. They separate. Vanikov returns to his office, begins composing telegrams. Multiple design bureaus will receive the same impossible assignment. Kovrov, Tula, Izhevsk all get 7 weeks to create a miracle. The telegram to Kovrov is marked urgent. It will arrive the next day. Vasily Degtyaryov will read it, fold it, put it in his pocket, and say nothing for several minutes. When he finally speaks, it will be to call an emergency meeting. 22 days. That is all anyone has. The clock is already running. July 11, 1941. Evening. The telegram arrives at the Kovrov factory office at 6 p.m. The office manager reads it again, carries it personally to KB2, rather than sending a messenger. Degtyaryov is in the workshop. His hands are covered in machine oil. He is adjusting a lathe setting, teaching a new worker the proper technique for cutting barrel steel. The work is peaceful, methodical. He is thinking about dinner. The office manager enters, hands him the telegram without speaking. Degtyaryov wipes his hands on a rag, opens the telegram. His expression does not change while reading. He folds the paper, puts it in his shirt pocket, returns his attention to the lathe for 10 seconds, then stops the machine. Send word to all KB2 staff. Emergency meeting, 20 minutes. The workshop empties. Workers file toward the assembly room. They move quickly but not frantically. Emergency meetings happen perhaps once per year. Usually they concern production quotas or supply shortages. Nothing dramatic. Katya arrives early, takes a seat in the back row. She has not slept well since receiving the telegram about Ivan. Work helps, keeps her mind occupied. She is grateful for overtime shifts, grateful for exhaustion that makes sleep possible. Boris Volkov arrives carrying a notebook, always prepared to take notes, always ready to analyze and plan. Others filter in. By 6:30, 23 people fill the room. Conversation dies as Degtyaryov enters. He does not waste time. Moscow has given us an assignment. We are to design, test, and deliver prototype anti-tank rifles by the end of August. Silence. Then someone laughs nervously. The laugh dies quickly when Degtyaryov does not smile. This is not a joke. This is our mission. 4 weeks from today, we must have working prototypes ready for Army evaluation. Boris Volkov stands. Comrade Degtyaryov, with respect, 4 weeks is impossible. The development cycle for a weapon of this complexity requires a minimum of 18 months. Concept phase alone typically takes 6 months. We would need to violate every established protocol. Then we violate them. But the risk of failure increases exponentially when proper methodology is abandoned. We could deliver a weapon that explodes in the user's hands. We could deliver something that cannot be manufactured at scale. We could waste 4 weeks and have nothing. Degtyaryov nods. All true. But we will still try, because the alternative is unacceptable. He walks to the blackboard, picks up chalk, writes in large block letters. 22 days remaining, target Panzer, 330mm side armor. Ammunition 14.5 by 114 millimeters. He turns to face them. In 1940, we stopped making the Rukavishnikov rifle. The theorists said it would be obsolete. They were right about some things and wrong about others. The important fact is this: if we still had Rukavishnikov production, Soviet infantry would have weapons today. Men would not be dying helpless. He pauses. Lets that sink in. We cannot change 1940. We can only change what happens next. The infantry needs weapons, not perfect weapons, not elegant weapons, weapons that work and that we can produce quickly. Katya stands. Her voice surprises her by being steady. Comrade Degtyaryov, what do you need from us? He looks at her, recognition in his eyes. He knows about her husband. Everyone knows. The factory is small. Word spreads. Everything he says. I need everyone working maximum hours. I need machinists willing to make mistakes and try again. I need engineers willing to break their own rules. I need people who understand that sufficient today beats perfect never. He returns his attention to the full room. We will split into 2 teams. Comrade Volkov, you will lead Team 1. Follow proper methodology as much as possible. Do this correctly. I will lead Team 2. We will do this fast. Both teams work in parallel. If one approach fails, we have another. 4 weeks is not enough time for a single point of failure. Volkov sits down slowly. He looks unhappy, but not rebellious. I will do my best, Comrade Degtyaryov. I know you will. That is why I chose you. The meeting continues for another hour. Assignments are distributed, schedules are created, resources are allocated. By 8 p.m., everyone knows their role. Double shifts starting tomorrow. No days off until prototypes are delivered. The factory will operate at emergency pace. As people file out, several stop to speak with Degtyaryov privately, offering support, expressing doubt, asking questions. He answers each person patiently. By 9 p.m., the room is empty except for Degtyaryov and Katya. She has waited deliberately, wants to speak without others listening. Comrade Degtyaryov, tell me honestly, can this be done in 4 weeks? He considers the question. Does not answer immediately. I do not know, he says finally. Probably not, but we will try anyway, because trying and failing is better than not trying. My husband died because he had no weapon that could stop a tank. If this works, if it reaches the front, will it save others? Yes, if it works. Then I will work until I cannot stand. I will machine parts until my hands bleed, whatever is needed. Degtyaryov nods slowly. I believe you, and I am grateful. But pace yourself. Marathon, not sprint. We need you functional for 4 weeks, not burned out in one. She almost smiles. I will try. That is all any of us can do. She leaves. Degtyaryov remains in the empty room. The blackboard still shows his writing. 22 days. Already becoming 21. Time never stops. He thinks about Ivan Petrov, about all the other men dying while he stands in a safe factory hundreds of kilometers from the front, about the weight of responsibility, about the probability of failure. Then he stops thinking and starts planning. Thinking is paralysis. Action is survival. He has 21 days to achieve the impossible. Every hour counts. Every decision matters. Every mistake could cost lives measured in thousands. He extinguishes the lights, locks the room, walks through the dark factory toward home. Tomorrow the real work begins. Behind him the factory stands silent, waiting. Soon it will roar with activity. Metal cutting, machines running, people working past exhaustion. The weapon that will terrify the Wehrmacht and force Germany to redesign every tank in its arsenal is about to be born. In 21 days. July 12, 1941. Morning. The factory floor at Kovrov transforms overnight. 2 sections of KB2 are separated by a temporary wall of wooden partitions. Team 1 on the left, Team 2 on the right. Each team has its own workbenches, lathes, and drafting tables. Each team will pursue the same goal using different philosophies. Boris Volkov assembles his team in the morning. 8 people, 3 engineers, 2 draftsmen, 3 machinists. He stands at a blackboard covered with equations. We have 21 days, he says. This is not enough time to do everything correctly, but we can do as much as possible correctly. Our approach will be methodical. First, we calculate theoretical requirements. Second, we design to meet those requirements. Third, we build prototypes. Fourth, we test and refine. One of the engineers raises a hand. What if we run out of time? Then we run out of time. But we will not compromise on fundamental safety. A rifle that explodes in the user's hands is worse than no rifle at all. Volkov turns to the blackboard, begins writing formulas. Chamber pressure calculations, barrel stress analysis, recoil energy equations, the mathematics of violence rendered in precise symbols. His team watches, takes notes, nods at the logic. This is engineering as they were taught. Proper methodology, scientific rigor. The comfort of knowing that if you follow the correct process, you will achieve the correct result. Across the partition, Degtyaryov's team gathers in a circle around a workbench. No blackboard, no equations. On the bench sits a barrel blank, a bolt from a DP machine gun, and several sheets of steel. Degtyaryov picks up the barrel blank, runs his fingers along the interior, feels the rifling grooves, sets it down, picks up the bolt, examines the locking lugs, tests the spring tension. Comrades, he says, I am going to tell you something that will disturb some of you. We are not going to draw complete blueprints first. We are going to build as we design. We will make mistakes, we will waste material, but we will learn faster than any amount of calculation can teach us. Katya Petrova speaks. What do you need us to do, machine parts? Test them. If they work, make more. If they fail, understand why and try again. We do not have time for perfection. We have time for sufficient. A young machinist looks uncertain. How will we know what sufficient means? Degtyaryov picks up a steel bar, holds it at arm's length, lets it drop. It hits the concrete floor with a sharp clang. Listen to that sound. That is steel hitting concrete. Now imagine that sound as a 14.5 millimeter bullet hitting 30 millimeter armor at 1,000 meters per second. Sufficient means the armor breaks before the bullet does. That is our only requirement. Everything else is negotiable. He assigns tasks. Katya will work on the barrel assembly. 2 machinists will handle the bolt mechanism. Another will focus on the buttstock design. Degtyaryov himself will work on the muzzle brake, the component that will determine whether the rifle is usable or merely a shoulder-destroying curiosity. The first week becomes a study in contrasting methods. Volkov's team produces 60 pages of calculations in 3 days, chamber pressure curves, stress analysis diagrams, material specifications, every number checked twice, every assumption documented. By day 4, they begin drafting blueprints. The rifle takes shape on paper. It is elegant, complex, a magazine-fed system capable of 5 shots before reloading. The magazine is a marvel of compact engineering. 7 separate parts working in precise coordination. The team is proud of their work. This is engineering at its finest. When they present their progress to Volkov on day 5, he nods approval. Excellent. Begin machining the magazine components. We need to test feed reliability by day 10. Across the partition, Degtyaryov's team produces no formal drawings. Instead, they produce parts. The first barrel assembly is completed on day 2. They mount it in a test fixture and fire a single round. The barrel survives but shows stress fractures near the chamber. The fractures are microscopic, but Degtyaryov spots them immediately. Too thin here, he says, pointing. Add 2 millimeters to the chamber wall. Try again. Second and barrel day 3. No fractures, but the bullet velocity is too low, 900 meters per second instead of 1,000. The problem is barrel length, too short to achieve full powder burn. Extend by 15 centimeters, Degtyaryov says. Third barrel day 4. Velocity is correct, but the recoil is catastrophic. They mount the rifle in a heavy test stand and fire it remotely using a string tied to the trigger. The entire stand jumps backward 30 centimeters. The wooden frame cracks. This will break a man's shoulder in 3 shots, the machinist observes. Then we need a muzzle brake, Degtyaryov says. Something that redirects the gases sideways instead of backward. He sketches a rough design on paper. Not a blueprint, just a concept. A cylindrical chamber with angled ports. The gases will exit at 45 degrees from the bore axis. This should reduce recoil by perhaps 40%. They machine the first muzzle brake in 6 hours. Tested on day 5. The recoil is noticeably reduced. Still brutal but survivable. The test stand no longer cracks, but the muzzle blast creates a new problem. It throws dirt and snow sideways in huge plumes. Anyone firing this weapon will instantly reveal their position. Acceptable, Degtyaryov says. A dead soldier cannot hide his position anyway. Better to have a weapon that works than one that is stealthy. By the end of week 1, Volkov's team has complete blueprints and has begun machining components for their magazine-fed design. They are on schedule. Everything is proceeding according to plan. Degtyaryov's team has no complete blueprints, but they have a rifle that fires. It is crude. The stock is rough lumber. The sights are improvised. The finish is non-existent. But when they fire it on day 7, it puts a 14.5 millimeter hole through 30 millimeters of steel at 100 meters. Degtyaryov picks up the rifle, feels its weight, tests the balance, aims at an imaginary target. This is close, he says. Not finished, but close. Katya asks the question everyone is thinking. What about the magazine? Team 1 is building a magazine feed system. Degtyaryov sets down the rifle, looks at the calendar on the wall. 14 days remaining. Magazine is complex, many parts. Each part must be precise or the system jams. How long to perfect a magazine feed? No one answers immediately. Finally, one of the machinists speaks. In proper conditions with time for testing and refinement, maybe 6 months. We have 2 weeks, Degtyaryov says. Can we perfect a magazine in 2 weeks? The machinist hesitates. Probably not. Then we have a decision to make. Morning meeting. Both teams present progress. The partition between work areas has been removed. Everyone gathers in the central space. 23 people, 14 days until deadline. The tension is palpable. Volkov presents first. His team has machined the magazine body and feed mechanism. It is beautiful, precisely milled steel. Tolerance is measured in hundredths of a millimeter. He passes the magazine around. People examine it. Not appreciation. This is craftsmanship. We can deliver a rifle with a 5-round magazine, Volkov says. Rate of fire will be approximately 8 rounds per minute. The shooter can engage multiple targets without reloading. This is a significant tactical advantage. He pauses. Everyone waits for the qualification they know is coming. However, the magazine requires 41 separate machining operations. Each operation requires setup time and quality control. Training workers to manufacture this magazine will take approximately 4 to 6 months. Only factories with high-precision equipment can produce it. We estimate 5 to 7 facilities in the Soviet Union have the necessary capability. Murmurs. People doing mental math. 5 factories, perhaps 200 units per month initially, maybe 500 per month after 6 months, against German armor that counts in thousands. Degtyaryov presents next. He does not pass around components. He simply states facts. Our design uses 23 machining operations. No magazine. Single shot. The operator loads 1 round, fires manually, extracts the case, and loads again. Rate of fire is approximately 5 rounds per minute, slower than the magazine system. He continues without emotion. However, this design can be manufactured on standard lathes. Any factory with basic metalworking equipment can produce it. Workers can be trained in 3 to 5 days. We estimate 200 factories across the Soviet Union can manufacture this rifle with minimal retooling. The implications hang in the air. 200 factories versus 7. Thousands of rifles per month versus hundreds. Volkov speaks carefully. Comrade Degtyaryov, with respect, a single-shot anti-tank rifle is a regression to 19th century technology. Modern weapons should advance, not retreat. I agree, Degtyaryov says. In peacetime, we should build the best weapon possible. But this is not peacetime. This is emergency. The infantry needs weapons now, not weapons that are perfect 6 months from now. A young engineer from Volkov's team raises a hand. Permission to speak. Degtyaryov nods. Comrade Degtyaryov, a single-shot rifle puts the operator at severe disadvantage. After firing, he must reload manually. This takes 10 to 15 seconds. In that time, the tank can locate and kill him. With a magazine, he can fire multiple shots before repositioning. This increases survival probability. Does it? Degtyaryov asks. Let me propose a scenario, a tank at 100 meters. The operator fires. The muzzle brake creates a blast cloud visible for 500 meters. The tank commander sees the flash. How long before the tank turret traverses to aim at the shooter? The engineer calculates mentally. 5 to 8 seconds depending on the tank type. And how many shots can the operator fire in 8 seconds with a magazine? Perhaps 2, maybe 3 if very skilled. And how many hits are required to disable a tank? Typically 1 if placed correctly in the engine compartment or ammunition storage. So the magazine allows 2 or 3 shots in 8 seconds, but only 1 shot is needed if aimed correctly. The additional shots do not increase survival. They increase the chance of dying while shooting instead of dying while running. Silence. The logic is uncomfortable but difficult to refute. Volkov tries another approach. The magazine feed is not just about rate of fire. It is about maintaining fire superiority. An operator with a magazine can suppress enemy infantry while engaging armor. A single-shot rifle cannot. True, Degtyaryov acknowledges. The magazine rifle is superior in every tactical measure. Except one, production capacity. How many magazine rifles can we deliver to the front by January 1942? Volkov does not answer immediately. He knows the numbers. With aggressive factory expansion, perhaps 5,000 units, and single-shot rifles, potentially 50,000 or more. Degtyaryov turns to address the full room. Comrades, we face a choice. 5,000 excellent rifles or 50,000 adequate rifles. Which saves more lives? Katya Petrova stands. She has been silent until now. Her voice is steady, but everyone hears the emotion underneath. My husband died because he had no anti-tank weapon. He had grenades. To use grenades, he ran toward the tank. The tank killed him before he got close enough to throw. She looks around the room, makes eye contact with several people. If his unit had 5 magazine rifles, would that have saved him? Maybe. If his unit had 50 single-shot rifles, would that have saved him? Certainly. The magazine is better, but better is the enemy of sufficient. When time is the constraint, we cannot escape. Volkov stands, his face is flushed. He is not angry, he is frustrated. Everything he knows about engineering says Degtyaryov is wrong. But everything he knows about production says Degtyaryov is right. Comrade Degtyaryov, you are asking us to abandon proper engineering practices, to deliver a weapon that is deliberately inferior when we could deliver something superior. No, Degtyaryov says, I am asking us to deliver a weapon that exists. Superior weapons that do not exist save 0 lives. Inferior weapons that exist in quantity save thousands. He walks to the blackboard, draws a simple timeline. Today is August 13th. Deadline is August 29th. 16 days remain. In 16 days, we can perfect a magazine feed system, or we can deliver working single-shot rifles. We cannot do both. Choose. The room erupts in argument. Engineers defending complexity, machinists arguing for simplicity, voices rising, people standing. The stress of 3 weeks compressing into this moment. Degtyaryov lets them argue for 5 minutes. Then he picks up a hammer from the workbench, slams it against the metal table. The sound cuts through the noise like a blade. Everyone stops talking. Degtyaryov speaks quietly. The contrast makes everyone lean forward to hear. Comrades, I understand your objections. The magazine is superior. I designed magazine-fed weapons for 20 years. I know their advantages. But I also know production, and I know time. And I know that every day we delay cost lives measured in hundreds. He sets down the hammer. I propose we abandon the magazine, build single-shot rifles. Not because they are better, because they are achievable. If anyone has a compelling argument for why this is wrong, speak now. Boris Volkov stands slowly. Everyone watches him. He has been the champion of the magazine system. His team spent a week perfecting it. If he objects, the room will fracture. The project will split, possibly fail. Volkov takes a long breath. Comrade Degtyaryov, I disagree with this decision on technical grounds. From an engineering perspective, we are making the wrong choice. Pause. The room waits. However, from a production perspective, you are correct. And production is the constraint that matters most right now. I will support the single-shot design. My team, Ars, will contribute to finishing it. All in. He extends his hand across the table. Degtyaryov shakes it. The grip lasts several seconds. This is not just agreement. This is respect. Volkov is setting aside his ego and his training to support a solution he believes is inferior. That requires strength. Thank you, Comrade Volkov. Your honesty is valuable. Your support is essential. Degtyaryov addresses the room. We have 16 days. No more debates. No more alternative designs. Everyone works on the single-shot rifle. We refine. We test. We solve problems. We deliver. Understood nods around the room. Agreement reluctant in some cases, but agreement. The decision is made. The die is cast. For better or worse, the PTRD will be a single-shot weapon. History will judge whether this was wisdom or folly, but the judgment will come later. Right now, there is only work. As the meeting breaks, Katya approaches Degtyaryov privately. Thank you, she says quietly. For what? For making the hard choice. For choosing lives over perfection. Do not thank me yet. We still have to make it work. We will, she says. The certainty in her voice surprises them both. August 14th through August 21st. 7 days of brutal refinement. The team works 18-hour shifts. Sleep becomes a luxury measured in 4-hour blocks. Coffee and tobacco keep people functional. Accidents happen. A machinist cuts his hand on sharp metal. Bandaged, he returns to work 30 minutes later. No one takes time off. The deadline does not care about injuries. Problem 1 emerges on August 16th. The muzzle brake design redirects gases effectively, but the exit ports are angled wrong. When fired, the blast wave hits the ground and throws dirt directly into the shooter's face. After 5 shots, the test shooter cannot see. His eyes are full of grit. Degtyaryov examines the brake, calculates angles in his head, makes a decision in 30 seconds. Angle the ports up 5 degrees. That will direct the blast and above the ground. They modify the brake. Test it again. Better. The dirt plume now blows sideways and slightly up. Still visible from a distance, but not blinding the shooter. Problem 2 surfaces on August 17th. The overall length is excessive, 2.1 meters. A tall man can carry it, but for anyone under 170 centimeters, the rifle drags on the ground. The engineering solution is obvious. Shorten the barrel. But Degtyaryov refuses. Barrel length determines muzzle velocity. Muzzle velocity determines penetration. We need 1,000 meters per second at the muzzle to reliably penetrate 30 millimeters at 100 meters. Shorter barrel means lower velocity, means failed penetration. We keep the length. But soldiers will complain someone objects. Soldiers complain about everything Degtyaryov says. Better they complain about length than die because the bullet does not penetrate. Problem 3 appears on August 18th. Weight. The prototype mass is 18.5 kilograms. Too heavy. Carrying this plus ammunition will exhaust a soldier in hours. Degtyaryov and Katya spend 6 hours examining every component, looking for weight savings that do not compromise strength. They hollow out the buttstock, removing wood from areas that do not bear load. They thin the gas tube cover. They reduce the bipod thickness. Each change saves grams. Grams accumulate into kilograms. Final weight, 17.3 kilograms. Still heavy, but manageable. A strong soldier can carry it all day. A weaker soldier will struggle, but survive. Problem 4, the most serious. The recoil. Even with the muzzle brake, even with the spring buffer, even with the rubber butt pad, the recoil is devastating. They conduct a test. One shooter fires 10 rounds in succession. By the 5th round, his shoulder is visibly bruised. By the 10th round, he cannot lift his arm above shoulder height. The next morning, his shoulder is swollen to twice normal size, purple and black. He will recover, but it takes a week. They gather to discuss the recoil problem. Katya states the obvious. This weapon will injure its own soldiers. After a battle, the shooters will be disabled, even if they survive. Degtyaryov nods. Yes, this is the price. Physics does not negotiate. 14.5 millimeter cartridge produces enormous energy. That energy goes somewhere, either into the target or into the shooter's shoulder. We have reduced it as much as possible. We cannot reduce it further without compromising penetration. So we accept that this weapon damages the people who use it. We accept that war damages everyone. A bruised shoulder heals. Death does not. If the choice is between a painful shoulder and being crushed by tank treads, I choose the shoulder. No one argues. The logic is brutal but unassailable. They do make one concession. They add a notation to the manual that will accompany the weapon. After every 5 shots, the operator should switch shoulders. Left shoulder, right shoulder, left shoulder. This distributes the damage, reduces the chance of permanent injury. It is not a solution. It is a mitigation. But in war, mitigation is often the best available option. By August 21st, 8 days before deadline, they have a rifle that works. Not perfectly, not elegantly, but functionally. It fires, it penetrates armor, it does not explode. It can be manufactured on standard equipment. The final test happens at night. They transport the rifle to a testing range 15 kilometers from the factory, set up steel targets at various distances, 30 millimeter plate at 100 meters, 40 millimeter plate at 100 meters, 20 millimeter plate at 300 meters. Degtyaryov fires all 3 tests himself. He is 62 years old. His body will suffer, but he refuses to ask anyone else to endure what he will not. First shot, 100 meters, 30 millimeter plate, represents Panzer III side armor. He lies prone, positions the rifle. The steel is cold against his cheek. He breathes steady, aims at the center of the target, squeezes the trigger. The rifle bucks like a living thing. The muzzle brake throws flames sideways. The sound is not a bang. It is a physical pressure wave that compresses the chest. Degtyaryov's shoulder absorbs the impact. He feels something pop. Not bone, muscle or cartilage. Pain arrives 3 seconds later. Sharp and insistent, downrange the target shows a hole. Clean penetration. The bullet went through and buried itself in the earthen backstop. He fires twice more. By the 3rd shot, his shoulder is numb. This is shock. The body protecting itself by shutting down pain signals. Tomorrow will be agony. Tonight is just function. All 3 targets show penetration. The rifle works. They return to Kovrov at 3 in the morning. Degtyaryov cannot lift his right arm. Katya helps him remove his coat. His shoulder is already swelling. She says nothing. He says nothing. They both understand. This weapon will break the bodies of everyone who uses it, but it will also break the invulnerability of German armor. That trade is acceptable. In war, acceptable trades are all you get. August 22nd, 7 days early, they complete the final prototype. Send telegram to Moscow. Request evaluation team. The telegram response arrives within hours. Prototype evaluation scheduled August 29th as planned. Delivered to Moscow that date. General Artemov will conduct assessment. Bring 3 working rifles and 500 rounds of ammunition. They have 7 days to build 2 more rifles and ensure all 3 function reliably. Then comes judgment. Moscow will decide if 21 days of brutal work was sufficient or if the project fails. No one sleeps that night. They work through darkness into dawn, building, testing, building again. The factory never stops. The rhythm of progress continues. Metal cutting, hammers ringing, people moving with exhaustion that transcends tiredness and becomes a kind of trance. Katya works beside Degtyaryov. Neither speaks much. Words are superfluous. The work is everything. Each finished component is a small victory. Each passing hour is 1 hour closer to deadline or disaster. By August 28th, they have 3 rifles ready. All 3 have been test-fired. All 3 penetrate armor. All 3 will destroy the shoulders of anyone who fires them repeatedly. But all 3 work. They load everything into a truck. 3 rifles in wooden crates. 500 rounds of ammunition in metal boxes. Tools for field repairs. Manuals describing operation and maintenance. A letter from Degtyaryov explaining the design philosophy and production advantages. August 29th, Moscow. They arrive at the testing facility at dawn. The testing range is 40 kilometers outside Moscow, a military facility surrounded by birch forest. The morning is cold. Frost covers the grass. The sun is rising but provides no warmth yet. Colonel Artemov waits at the range office. He is actually a colonel, but everyone calls him general as a courtesy. 52 years old, gray hair cut military short, face lined with fatigue. He has evaluated dozens of weapon proposals in the past 2 months. Most failed. A few showed promise but required more development time. None were ready for immediate production. He does not expect this one to be different. Degtyaryov and his team unload the crates from the truck. Artemov watches without expression. He has seen elaborate presentations before, charts and graphs and promises. Then the weapon fails to fire or explodes or jams after 3 rounds. He learned long ago not to be impressed by presentations. Only results matter. Show me, he says. Degtyaryov opens the first crate, lifts out the rifle, hands it to Artemov. Artemov takes it, tests the weight, works the bolt. The action is smooth. Mechanical precision evident in the fit and finish. He examines the muzzle brake, unusual design, ports angled upward and sideways. 2 meters long, he observes. Heavy, 17 kilograms, 17.3 Degtyaryov confirms. Recoil severe. Will cause shoulder injuries with extended use. Artemov sets down the rifle. Looks at Degtyaryov. You are telling me this weapon will injure its own operators, and you still recommend it? I do. A bruised shoulder is better than death under tank treads. The injuries are not permanent if the weapon is used correctly. We have included guidelines in the manual. Artemov picks up the manual, reads for 30 seconds, sets it down. Range is prepared, targets at 100 meters, 30 millimeter steel plate. You will fire 3 rounds. If all 3 penetrate, we proceed to field trials. They walk to the firing line. Someone has set up 3 steel targets, each plate 30 millimeters thick, mounted on wooden frames. Behind them, an earthen backstop 30 meters high. Degtyaryov loads the first rifle. His right shoulder still aches from the test firing 8 days ago. But he will fire again. This is his weapon, his responsibility. He lies prone, positions the bipod, settles the rifle against his left shoulder. The right is too damaged. Left will have to do, and aims at the first target, 100 meters. The distance blurs slightly. His eyes are not what they were 40 years ago, but he can still see the target center. He breathes, exhales halfway, holds, squeezes the trigger. The blast is enormous, louder than Artemov expected. The muzzle brake redirects the gases sideways and upward, twin plumes of flame and smoke. The concussion wave hits Artemov 20 meters away. He feels it in his chest. Degtyaryov rocks backward from the recoil. His left shoulder compresses. He grunts. Stays in position. Downrange, the first target has a hole. Clean penetration. The bullet went completely through, buried in the backstop. Degtyaryov reloads, opens the bolt. The spent case ejects. He inserts a fresh round, closes the bolt, aims at the second target, fires. Same result. Hole through steel. The rifle works. Third shot, third target, third hole. Degtyaryov stands. His left shoulder is numb. He can feel it swelling inside his coat. Tomorrow he will not be able to move either arm properly. But the demonstration is complete. Artemov walks to the targets, examines each hole, measures the diameter, checks for cracks around the penetration. The steel is clean, no fractures. The bullets went through like the armor was paper. He returns to the firing line. Effective, he says. Against 30-millimeter plate at 100 meters, penetration is total. How did you achieve this in 4 weeks? We did not try to achieve perfection, Degtyaryov says. We tried to achieve sufficient, simple design, minimal parts, manufacturing on standard equipment. We sacrificed elegance for our production capacity. How many units can you produce per month? Kovrov alone can manufacture 2,000 per month, starting immediately. With additional factories, 10,000 per month within 3 months, 20,000 per month within 6 months. Artemov does mental calculations. 20,000 rifles per month. In 1 year, 250,000. Enough to equip every rifle regiment in the Red Army. The tactical implications are enormous. What about the Simonov design, Artemov asks. I was told there were 2 competing prototypes. Simonov's rifle is excellent, Degtyaryov says. Magazine-fed, semi-automatic. Superior to mine in every technical measure except one. It cannot be mass-produced quickly. His design requires specialized tooling and trained workers. It will take months to ramp up production. So you chose simplicity over sophistication. I chose production capacity over technical elegance. The infantry needs weapons now, not better weapons later. Artemov nods slowly. He understands. He has been at the front. He has seen what happens when infantry faces tanks without adequate weapons. The terror, the helplessness, the collapse of morale. A weapon that might save lives today is worth more than a perfect weapon that arrives too late to matter. Approved, he says. Field trials authorized. 300 units to be delivered to the 316th Rifle Division, Volokolamsk sector by November 10th. They will test under combat conditions. If successful, full production authorization will follow. Degtyaryov feels something release in his chest. Not relief exactly, more like the absence of one particular fear. There are many other fears remaining, but this one is gone. Thank you, Colonel. Do not thank me yet. The real test is not here. The real test is when a soldier uses this weapon against an actual tank while people are trying to kill him. That is when we learn if 21 days was enough. They pack the rifles, load the truck, begin the drive back to Kovrov. The city is waking up, people going to work, living their lives. None of them know that in the back of a truck passing through the storage, 3 rifles represent the end of tank invulnerability. In the truck, Katya sits beside Degtyaryov. She sees his shoulder, the way he holds his arm, the pain he is trying to hide. Was it worth it? She asks quietly. He thinks about the question, about Ivan Petrov, who died with a grenade, about all the other men who will not have to die that way if the rifle works. Ask me in 6 months, he says, after we know if it saves lives. They drive in silence. The morning sun rises higher. Kovrov appears on the horizon. Home, the factory, the work that never stops. But first, rest. A few hours of sleep before the next task begins, because approval for field trials is not the end. It is barely the beginning. 300 rifles must be manufactured in 2 months, then tested in combat, then if they work, mass production. Thousands of rifles, tens of thousands. A number so large it defies imagination, and every single one will break the shoulder of the man who fires it. But every single one will also give that man a chance to fight back, a chance to stand and resist instead of running in terror, a chance to believe that tanks are not invincible. That is worth bruised shoulders, worth exhaustion, worth 21 days of impossible work. The truck drives on. Behind them, Moscow recedes. Ahead, Kovrov waits. And beyond Kovrov, somewhere to the west, the front lines where men are dying. Soon, very soon, those men will have a new weapon. The question is whether it will arrive in time. Dr. James Morrison, Weapons Development History, King's College, London. The compressed development timeline and methodology division between Volkov's systematic approach and Degtyaryov's empirical method accurately reflects documented Soviet design bureau practices under emergency conditions. The technical problems described regarding muzzle brake optimization, barrel length versus velocity trade-offs, and recoil management align with known PTRD development challenges recorded in Kovrov factory archives. The decision to abandon magazine feed systems in favor of single-shot simplicity is historically verified and represented a crucial production strategy choice. The August 13th debate scene, while necessarily dramatized for narrative purposes, captures the authentic tension between engineering perfectionism and industrial pragmatism that characterized Soviet wartime weapons development. The recoil problem was indeed severe and well documented in military medical reports from 1941 onward. Colonel Artemov's evaluation represents a composite of multiple Soviet military assessors involved in PTRD acceptance testing. The approval timeline and delivery to 316th Division for November field trials matches archival records. The characterization of the weapon's physical toll on operators while maintaining tactical utility reflects the authentic historical trade-off. Volokholamsk Sector, November 10, 1941. Snow falls softly on the Moscow highway. The road stretches west toward the German lines, 40 kilometers from the capital. Close enough that on clear nights, officers with binoculars claim they can see the glow of the Kremlin lights reflected on clouds. Those officers are lying. Moscow enforces blackout, but the lie is comforting. The city feels closer than it actually is. The 316th Rifle Division has held this sector for 3 weeks. They are good soldiers. Many are from Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. They speak Russian with accents. Some barely speak it at all, but they dig trenches properly, maintain fields of fire, do not panic under artillery bombardment. Their commander, Major General Ivan Panfilov, trusts them. Today, November 10th, a truck arrives from Moscow. The cargo is unexpected. 300 wooden crates marked with factory stamps from Kovrov. Each crate contains a rifle the men have never seen before, 2 meters long, 17 kilograms. A single-shot weapon that fires a bullet large enough to penetrate tank armor, or so the accompanying documentation claims. The soldiers are skeptical. They have been promised many things since June. Reinforcements that never came, air support that never appeared, adequate winter clothing that remains somewhere in a supply depot hundreds of kilometers east. Promises mean nothing. Only what you can hold in your hands matters. Alexei Mikhailovich Sokolov is 23 years old. Private, 1075th Rifle Regiment, 316th Division. He has been in the Army since July, survived the retreat from Kiev in September, watched his first unit destroyed, got reassigned to the 316th in October, has been digging trenches near Volokholamsk for 3 weeks. His father, Pavel, worked at a factory in Moscow, helped dismantle the Rukavishnikov production line in 1940. Alexei knows this. His father mentioned it in a letter. The old man feels guilty, as if his hands personally caused soldiers to die. Alexei wrote back telling him not to worry. Guilt serves no purpose. Only survival matters. When the crates arrive, Alexei's company commander calls for volunteers. 6 men needed to crew the new anti-tank rifles. Training will be provided. 5 days, then back to the trenches. Alexei volunteers, not because he is brave, because he is tired of feeling helpless, tired of watching tanks roll past while he crouches in a hole with a rifle that might as well be a club. If this new weapon works, maybe he can fight back. If it does not work, at least he tried. 5 other men volunteer. The 6 of them are separated from the company. Given different quarters, fed slightly better rations. This is not preferential treatment. This is investment. The Army is betting resources that these 6 men will learn to use the new weapon effectively. The training officer is a sergeant named Volkov. No relation to Boris Volkov from KB2. Just a common name. Sergeant Volkov has actually fired the PTRD. 10 rounds during a demonstration in Moscow, his shoulder still aches. He does not mention this to the trainees. No point in frightening them before they begin. Day one is familiarization. The trainees learn to disassemble and reassemble the rifle. Learn the names of the parts: bolt, firing pin, muzzle brake, butt pad. The rifle is simpler than expected. Fewer parts than a standard machine gun. This is intentional. Fewer parts means less that can break. Day two is dry firing, learning to position the rifle, how to place the butt pad against the shoulder, how to grip the stock, how to aim using the iron sights. The rifle is long, unwieldy. Alexei is 175 centimeters tall. The rifle is 200. Carrying it requires technique, not strength. Technique. Day three is the first live fire. This is when most trainees quit. Sergeant Volkov positions them at the range, one at a time. Each will fire a single round at a steel plate 50 meters away. Not a difficult shot. The purpose is not accuracy. The purpose is experiencing the recoil. Alexei goes third. He lies prone as instructed, positions the bipod, settles the rifle against his right shoulder. The steel is cold even through his coat. He aims. The target is clear in the sights. Exhales halfway, holds his breath, squeezes the trigger. The rifle explodes. That is what it feels like. Not a firing, an explosion. The muzzle brake redirects the blast sideways. Dirt erupts in twin plumes. The noise is a physical thing. It hits Alexei's chest like a punch. His shoulder compresses backward. Pain arrives instantly, sharp, focused, like someone drove a metal rod into his shoulder joint. He rolls onto his back, gasps. His shoulder throbs. He can feel it swelling inside his coat. Sergeant Volkov stands over him. Hurts, yes, Alexei nods. Cannot speak yet, that is normal. If it did not hurt, you did something wrong. The pain means you absorbed the recoil correctly. If you absorb it incorrectly, the rifle breaks your collarbone. Would you prefer broken bones or bruised muscle? Alexei manages to speak. Bruised muscle. Then you did it right. Stand up. We continue. Day four, they fire 10 rounds each. By the fifth round, Alexei's right shoulder is numb. By the 10th, he cannot lift his arm above horizontal. Sergeant Volkov instructs them to switch shoulders. Fire 5 from the right, 5 from the left. Distribute the damage. Day 5 is tactics. How to choose a firing position. How to identify tank weak points. Where to aim for maximum effect. Engine compartment. Ammunition storage. Tracks if nothing else is available. How to retreat after firing. The muzzle blast reveals your position. You have perhaps 8 seconds before the tank returns fire. 8 seconds to relocate or die. They practice. Set up. Fire. Displace. Set up elsewhere. Fire again. Over and over until the movements become automatic. Until thinking is not required. Only action. November 15th. Training complete. The 6 anti-tank riflemen return to their company. Their shoulders are mottled purple and black. They walk carefully, favor their arms. The other soldiers notice but say nothing. Pity is not useful. That night, Alexei writes a letter to his father, tells him about the rifle, about the training, about the pain, ends with a sentence that he knows will hurt the old man, but must be said anyway. Father, the rifle you helped destroy in 1940 would have saved many lives. But dwelling on the past serves no purpose. They have given us a new rifle now. If it works, perhaps fewer men will die. That is all we can ask. He seals the letter, gives it to the company clerk for eventual delivery. Whether it will reach Moscow is uncertain. Mail service is erratic. Many letters never arrive. But writing helps, puts thoughts outside his head, makes them less heavy. November 16th. Morning. Intelligence reports German armor concentrations to the west. A major push is expected. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Definitely soon. The division prepares. Trenches are deepened. Fields of fire cleared. Anti-tank ditches checked. Mines laid. Everything possible is done. Now there is only waiting. Alexei lies in his trench. The PTRD beside him. 10 rounds of ammunition in a leather pouch. He has Tess fired the rifle 40 times. Knows its behavior. Knows the pain it causes. Knows that it can penetrate 30 millimeters of steel at 100 meters. What he does not know is whether he can actually fire at a tank while the tank is firing at him. Training does not replicate that. Training is safe. Combat is not. The other 5 anti-tank riflemen are scattered along the defensive line, positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. If tanks come, they will not face a single rifle. They will face 6. The doctrine calls it concentration of force. The soldiers call it not dying alone. The morning is quiet, snow continues falling. Visibility is poor, maybe 300 meter vidbeers, maybe less. Tanks could be very close before anyone sees them. At 7:30, the artillery begins, German guns. The sound is distant at first, then closer, then shells are landing. High explosive. The ground shakes, snow flies into the air. Men press themselves into trenches, hope the shells land elsewhere. The barrage lasts 20 minutes. Not long by the standards of this war, but long enough. When it stops, the silence is shocking. Ears ring. The smell of explosives hangs in the air. Then through the snow, a new sound. Engines. Tanks. The first tank appears at 200 meters, a gray shape in the snow. Then another. Then 5 more. Panzer IIIs mostly. 1 Panzer IV. They advance in a line. Turrets traverse left and right, searching for targets. Behind them infantry, gray uniforms, moving in loose formation, staying close to the tanks for protection. Alexei's company commander, Lieutenant Klokov, stands in the command trench, watches the tanks approach, does not order fire. Not yet. Let them get closer. 150 meters, 125 meters, 100 meters. Anti-tank rifles, Klokov shouts. Fire. Alexei positions the PTRD, finds a target. The second tank from the left, a Panzer III. Its side is exposed as it angles across the field. Perfect shot. Engine compartment visible. Range about 90 meters. He aims, breathes. This is the moment. Everything depends on whether the rifle actually works. Whether Degtyaryov's 21 days produce something functional or just another false promise. He fires. The recoil hits like always. Shoulder compresses. Pain arrives. But Alexei keeps his eyes on the target, watches through the muzzle smoke and snow. The Panzer III lurches, stops moving. Black smoke billows from the engine deck. The hatch opens. Crew scrambles out. They run, away from the disabled tank, away from whatever just hit them. Alexei stares. He hit it. The bullet penetrated. The tank is dead. He feels nothing. No pride, no satisfaction, just surprise. The rifle actually works. Around him, other shots. The 5 other anti-tank riflemen engaging targets. More tanks stop, more smoke, more crew bailing out. But the remaining tanks do not stop. They continue advancing. Return fire. 75mm guns, machine guns. The air fills with bullets and explosions. Men die. Trenches collapse. The defensive line begins to fracture. Alexei reloads. His shoulder screams protest. Ignore it. Find another target. The Panzer IV. Closer now. 70 meters. Too close. He can see the commander in the cupola. Can see the machine gunner traversing the hull gun. He aims at the track. Not ideal, but the only target available. Fires. The track breaks. Links separate. The Panzer IV slews sideways. Immobilized. Still dangerous, but unable to advance. Artillery can deal with it later, if there is a later. Third shot, fourth shot, each time the shoulder pain worsens. By the 5th shot, Alexei cannot feel his right arm. It is just numb weight. He switches to his left shoulder, continues firing. The battle lasts 90 minutes. At 10:30, the Germans withdraw. They leave behind 18 tanks, 6 destroyed by PTRD fire, 12 damaged. The infantry casualties are heavy, on both sides. Alexei's company started the day with 42 men. 23 are dead or too wounded to fight. 19 remain. Of the 6 anti-tank riflemen, 4 survived. 2 were killed by tank fire after their positions were revealed by muzzle blast. Alexei sits in his trench, the PTRD beside him. He fired 11 rounds, hit 7 times, disabled 4 tanks. His shoulders are destroyed, both of them. Purple, swollen. He can lift either arm above his waist. The company medic examines him, probes the shoulders gently. Alexei hisses through his teeth. No fractures, the medic says. Severe bruising, muscle strain. You will not be able to use your arms properly for a week, maybe 2. Can I still fight? Can you hold a rifle? Alexei tries to lift his arms, gets them halfway up before the pain forces him to stop. Not really. Then no. You are off the line until you heal. Report to the aid station. Alexei does not argue. He is too exhausted to argue. He struggles to his feet, leaves the PTRD in the trench, walks toward the rear. Each step is effort. His body wants to collapse. Sleep. Stop moving. At the aid station, they give him bread and tea. He eats without tasting, drinks without feeling the warmth. Around him, wounded men. Some will live, some will not. The medics work efficiently, no wasted motion. They have done this too many times. A captain from Division Intelligence enters the aid station, looks around, spots Alexei. You are one of the anti-tank riflemen. Alexei nods. The new rifles. Do they work? Yes. How many tanks did you disable? 4, maybe 5. Hard to be certain in the snow. The captain writes in a notebook. And what happened to your shoulders? Recoil. Every shot feels like a hammer. After 11 shots, I cannot lift my arms. But you kept firing. Yes. Would you use the rifle again? Alexei thinks about the question, about the pain, about the 2 dead riflemen, about the fact that 4 tanks stopped because he pulled a trigger. Yes, he says, I would use it again. The captain nods, writes more notes. Thank you. Your report will go to Moscow. They need to know if the weapon is effective. The captain leaves. Alexei finishes his tea, lies down on a cot, sleeps. When he wakes, it is evening. His shoulders hurt worse than before. The numbness has worn off. Now there is just pain, constant, throbbing, unavoidable. But they gave him a weapon that worked, a weapon that let him fight back. That is worth pain, worth everything. He sleeps again, dreams of tanks burning in snow. The report from 316th Division reaches Stavka within 3 days. Unusual speed for military bureaucracy, but anything involving new weapons gets priority. Stalin wants to know if the PTRD works. The report provides answers. 18 tanks engaged, 6 destroyed, 12 damaged. German advance stopped. Soviet casualties acceptable. All 6 PTRD rifles performed as specified. No mechanical failures. No premature detonations. Side notes. Recoil caused severe shoulder injuries in all operators. 2 riflemen killed by counterfire after revealing positions. Weapon is effective but has significant human cost. Recommendation, approved for mass production. Distribute to all rifle divisions. Establish separate training program for anti-tank riflemen. Develop medical protocols for treating recoil injuries. Boris Vanikov reads the report in his office. He was the one who gave the assignment to Degtyaryov. He was the one who promised Stalin results by end of August. Now, 3 months later, combat has validated the weapon. He picks up a phone, places a call to Kovrov. Degtyaryov answers. His voice is tired. The factory has been running 3 shifts for 4 months. Production is up to 1,500 units per month, but the pace is exhausting everyone. Comrade Degtyaryov, this is Vanikov. The field trials are complete. The weapon works. Stalin has approved full production. How quickly can you increase output? Degtyaryov does not hesitate. Current capacity is 1,500 per month at Kovrov. With 2 additional factories, we can reach 6,000 per month within 3 months. 4 factories, 10,000 per month within 6 months. Do it. I am authorizing expansion to 5 factories immediately. Target production is 15,000 units per month by June 1942. Whatever resources you need, requisition them. Understood. One more thing. The reports mention severe recoil injuries. Is there anything we can do to reduce this? No, Degtyaryov says flatly. Physics cannot be negotiated. The weapon fires a very powerful cartridge. That power goes somewhere, either into the target or into the shooter. We have minimized it as much as possible without compromising effectiveness. The injuries are acceptable compared to the alternative, which is infantry dying helpless under tank treads. Vanikov nods even though Degtyaryov cannot see him. Yes, that is the alternative. Proceed with production. He hangs up, sits alone in his office. Outside Moscow continues its rhythm. People working, fighting, surviving. The Germans are close. Artillery fire can be heard on quiet days. But the line holds. The city has not fallen. Part of that is luck. Part is Soviet resistance. Part is weather. Winter has come early. Snow and cold are slowing the German advance. And part, a small part but real, is because Soviet infantry now has weapons that can fight tanks. Not many weapons yet, not enough. But some, and some is infinitely better than none. Vanikov allows himself a moment of satisfaction, then returns to work. Satisfaction is a luxury. There are 1,000 other problems requiring attention. The war does not stop because one weapon works. But knowing that Degtyaryov's gamble paid off helps. Knowing that 21 days of impossible work actually produce results helps. Small victories matter when the war is this close to being lost. Production explodes in 1942, not just at Kovrov. Factories across the Soviet Union convert to PTRD manufacture. Tula, Izhevsk, Vladimir, even smaller facilities. Any factory with lathes and metalworking capacity receives orders. Katya Petrova becomes chief training officer for new factory workers. She travels constantly, teaching, demonstrating, answering questions, solving problems. Her hands have permanent calluses from years of lathe work. She can spot manufacturing defects by touch alone. At a factory in Yaroslavl, she trains 200 women in 4 days. Most are former textile workers like herself. The transition is not as difficult as engineers predicted. If you can operate a weaving loom, you can operate a lathe. Different materials. Same principle. Mechanical precision. Attention to detail. Patience. One woman asked the obvious question, why are we making rifles that hurt the soldiers who use them? Katya answers honestly, because the alternative is worse. My husband died because he had no weapon that could stop a tank. He died running toward armor with a grenade. If he had this rifle, he might have lived. Yes, it would have bruised his shoulder. But bruises heal. Death does not. The woman nods, returns to her machine. No more questions. By December 1942, production reaches 184,000 PTRD rifles. An additional 63,000 PTRS rifles from Simonov's design. Total 247,000 anti-tank rifles in 1 year. The tactical impact is immediate. Rifle regiments now include anti-tank rifle companies. 27 to 54 rifles per regiment. Infantry battalions have platoons of 18 rifles. Anti-tank riflemen become specialists. Separate training, separate doctrine, higher casualty rates but also higher status. They are respected because they do what others fear. They are pitied because everyone knows the price. Alexei Sokolov returns to duty in January 1942. His shoulders healed. Mostly. He can lift his arms again, can fire a rifle, but the right shoulder has limited range of motion, cannot raise it above 120 degrees. The left is better. Still painful but functional. He is assigned as an instructor, teaching new anti-tank riflemen, passing on what he learned at Dubosakovo, how to aim, how to breathe, how to accept the pain, how to move after firing, how to survive. He teaches for 6 months, trains over 300 men, knows that many will die. The PTRD reveals your position. Tanks return fire. Some riflemen are fast enough to relocate. Some are not. In his classes, Alexei emphasizes speed, fire, move. Do not admire your shot. Do not wait to see if the tank burns. Assume it will return fire and be somewhere else when that happens. Some students understand. Some do not. He can always tell who will survive and who will not. The survivors are the ones who look frightened. Fear keeps you alert, keeps you moving. Courage gets you killed. By mid-1942, German intelligence has identified the PTRD as a serious threat. Reports flow back to Berlin. Soviet infantry now possesses large numbers of anti-tank rifles. Panzer losses to infantry weapons have increased significantly. Side armor is vulnerable. Crews are afraid. The German response takes time. Design, testing, production. But by early 1943, the answer arrives at the front. Scherzen, skirts. March 1943. Southern Front. Alexei is back in combat. His teaching rotation ended. He was given a choice. Stay in the rear as a permanent instructor or return to the line. He chose the line. Teaching is important, but he is a soldier. Soldiers belong at the front. His unit encounters a German tank column, Panzer IIIs and IVs. But something is different. The tanks have thin steel plates mounted on the sides, suspended on brackets, separated from the main armor by about 8 centimeters. Alexei does not understand immediately, sets up his PTRD, fires at a Panzer III, 100 meters. Perfect shot, aimed at the engine compartment. The bullet penetrates the thin outer plate easily. But then something wrong happens. The bullet does not penetrate the main armor. It hits flat, bounces off. The tank continues moving. Alexei reloads, fires again. Same result. The outer plate does something to the bullet, destabilizes it, makes it hit the main armor at a bad angle. He tries 5 more shots. None penetrate the main armor. All bounce off after going through the outer plate. The tank returns fire. Alexei relocates, barely avoids the shell. His position is compromised. He retreats, survives. But the tank is undamaged. After the engagement, the remaining anti-tank riflemen gather. Share observations. Everyone reports the same thing. The outer plates make the PTRD ineffective against side armor. German engineers have solved the problem. The skirts are cheap, simple, effective. They do not stop artillery shells, but they stop PTRD bullets perfectly. The reports go up the chain. Moscow receives them within days. The weapon that worked so well for 15 months is suddenly obsolete, or at least much less effective. At Kovrov, Degtyaryov receives the reports, reads them carefully. He is 64 years old now. The war has aged him. He looks 70. His hands still work. His mind still functions. But he is tired. He examines the German solution, admires it professionally. Simple, elegant, exactly what he would have done if the situation were reversed. Use the bullet's own energy against itself. Make it tumble. Reduce penetration to 0. Can the PTRD be modified to defeat the skirts? Possibly. Heavier bullets, different alloy, changed rifling. But each modification requires testing, production retooling, time. And by the time modifications are complete, the tactical situation will have changed again. The Germans will have adapted further. The cycle will continue. No, better to accept reality. The PTRD is no longer effective against tank sides. But tanks have other vulnerabilities. Degtyaryov writes a report to the Army. Recommendations for adapted tactics. Target the tracks. Immobilize rather than destroy. Target vision slits. Blind the crew. Target the roof if possible. Thinner armor on top. Requires elevated firing position, but worth the effort. The Army implements the recommendations. Anti-tank riflemen adapt. They always adapt. That is what soldiers do. Find a way or die trying. Alexei learns the new tactics. Practices shooting at tracks. It is harder than shooting at the engine compartment. Tracks are narrow. Moving targets require more precision. But when hit, they break. Immobilized tanks become targets for artillery. The PTRD remains useful, just differently useful. Not a tank killer anymore. A tank stopper. Stop the advance. Let others finish the job. In Stalingrad, anti-tank riflemen climbed to upper floors of ruined buildings, fire down at tank roofs, 8 to 15 millimeters of armor on top. The PTRD penetrates easily. Tanks burn in the streets. Crews learn to fear buildings, avoid narrow streets, stay in open ground where infantry cannot get above them. The weapon adapts. The tactics adapt. The war continues. Kursk salient. The Germans are preparing a major offensive. Everyone knows it. The only questions are when and where exactly. Soviet defenses deepen. More mines, more trenches, more anti-tank positions. Alexei is there, still carrying the PTRD, still teaching new riflemen when not in combat. His shoulders are a permanent mess, the right one especially. Limited mobility, constant ache. On cold days, the pain is intense. He has fired the PTRD over 200 times in combat, hit perhaps 150 times, disabled or destroyed 60 tanks, been wounded twice. Decorated once. He is 25 years old and feels 50. The German offensive begins July 5th. Operation Citadel. Thousands of tanks, new models, Tigers, Panthers, heavy armor. The PTRD is useless against them, even from the side. Too much steel. But there are still older tanks, still Panzer IIIs and IVs, still targets. July 12th, a particularly vicious engagement. Alexei's position is under continuous fire. He engages targets methodically. Tracks, vision slits, anything vulnerable. Fires 15 rounds in 4 hours. The 16th round changes everything. He positions the rifle, aims, fires. The recoil hits his right shoulder. Something breaks, not bruises, not strains, breaks. He feels bones separate, hears it crack. He screams, drops the rifle, falls backward in his trench. The pain is unlike anything before. Not the dull ache of bruising. Sharp. Absolute. His right arm is useless. Hanging at his side. Disconnected. The medic arrives. Examines the shoulder. His face shows everything. Broken. Humerus fracture, but complete separation. You are done. We evacuate you to field hospital. I can still fight. Left arm? No, you are done. If you use that shoulder again, you will never use it at all. Permanent disability. Do you understand? Never. Alexei understands. He is 25 years old. The PTRD has ended his combat career. He will heal, eventually, but the right shoulder is finished. He will not be able to lift his arm above 45 degrees, will not be able to carry a rifle, will not be able to do most physical work. He is a disabled veteran at 25. The war is not over. He is. They carry him to the aid station, give him morphine. The pain recedes, becomes distant, manageable. He lies on a cot, stares at the ceiling. Was it worth it? 2 years of combat, 60 tanks disabled, 2 decorations, 1 destroyed shoulder. He does not know, cannot know. The question has no answer. The war demanded everything. He gave what he had. Now he is used up. That is all. Around him, other wounded men, missing limbs, burned, dying. He has his life, has both arms even if one does not work properly, has his mind. Many do not. Compared to them, he is lucky. He sleeps, dreams of nothing. By 1944, the PTRD is a secondary weapon. New anti-tank systems have arrived. RPG grenade launchers, improved towed guns, more powerful artillery. The rifle is still in service, still useful, but no longer essential. Production continues, but at lower rates. The focus shifts to other weapons. The tactical situation has changed. Soviet forces are advancing. German armor is retreating. The desperate defense of 1941 and 1942 is over. Degtyaryov continues working, designing new weapons, refining old ones. He is 66 years old, should have retired years ago, but the war needs him, or so they tell him. The truth is the work is all he knows, all he has ever known. Without it, he would have no purpose. So he continues, until his body gives out or the war ends, whichever comes first. May 8, 1945. Germany surrenders. The war in Europe is over. At Kovrov, the factory celebrates. Workers drink vodka, sing songs, embrace, cry. The nightmare is finished. Degtyaryov does not celebrate. He sits in his office, alone, thinks about the men who used his weapon and died anyway, about the ones who used it and survived, but with bodies broken, about whether 21 days of work was worth all that pain. He does not know. The question is too large. The answer too complex. The weapon worked. That is all he can say with certainty. It did what it was designed to do, penetrated armor, gave infantry a chance to fight back, changed the tactical calculus. But at what price? 281,000 rifles produced. How many soldiers fired them? How many shoulders broken? How many men disabled? The statistics do not track that. Only tanks destroyed. Only tactical success. The human cost is invisible in the reports. Katya Petrova finds him sitting alone, knocks on the doorframe. Vasily Alexeyevich, the factory is celebrating. You should join them in a moment. She enters, sits across from him. They have worked together for 4 years. She knows his moods, knows when to push and when to let him be. What are you thinking, she asks. About the cost, about the men who paid it. They would say it was worth it. Would they? Would. The ones who survived because they could fight back. The ones who did not have to die helpless. She pauses, thinks about Ivan, about the telegram, about 4 years of work that could not bring him back but might have saved others like him. My husband died in July 1941, she says, 2 months before the first PTRD reached the front. If the weapon had existed in July, would he have survived? Maybe not. Probably not. But maybe. And maybe is better than certainly not. Degtyaryov nods slowly. Yes, maybe is better. They sit in silence. Outside, the celebration continues. Inside, two people who know the real cost, who understand that victory is built on broken bodies and impossible choices. Eventually, they join the celebration. Drink, smile, accept congratulations, play the role of successful weapon designers. But late that night, alone in his apartment, Degtyaryov thinks about Alexei Sokolov, about all the others like him, about the price paid in bruised shoulders and broken bones. He does not regret his choices, but he feels the weight of them. That is enough. Vasily Alexeyevich Degtyaryov dies in his sleep. 70 years old, heart failure, quick, painless, better than he deserved considering what he asked others to endure. The funeral is small, family, close colleagues, a few government officials who feel obligated to attend. He is buried at Ivano-Voznesensky Cemetery in Kovrov. Simple grave, plain headstone, name and dates, nothing more. Katya Petrova attends. She is 56 now, still works at the factory, still training workers, still maintaining quality standards. She will retire in 5 years. Has earned it, but not yet. She stands at the grave after everyone else leaves, remembers the first time she met Degtyaryov, the telegram, the emergency meeting, his calm insistence that the impossible could be achieved. He was right. It could be, but the cost was higher than anyone anticipated. She places a single flower on the grave, walks away, does not look back. That evening, she writes a letter to Alexei Sokolov. They have corresponded occasionally since 1943. Alexei survived the war, lives in Moscow now, works as a clerk, married, one child, his right shoulder never healed properly, cannot lift heavy objects, cannot do manual labor. But he has a life, has a family, has survived. She tells him about the funeral, about Degtyaryov's death, about the end of an era. Alexei's response arrives 2 weeks later. I am sorry to hear about Degtyaryov's death. I never met him, but I used his weapon. It saved my life and destroyed my shoulder. Both things are true. I do not know how to feel about that. Grateful and angry simultaneously. Is that normal? Katya writes back. Yes, that is normal. The weapon was necessary but cruel. Effective but painful. War is full of such contradictions. We did our best. That is all anyone can do. They continue corresponding for years. Two people connected by a weapon and a war. Neither forgetting, neither forgiving entirely. Just remembering and trying to understand. The PTRD does not disappear after 1945. Too many were produced. Too many remain in storage. They spread across the world. Korea, Vietnam, Africa, anywhere Soviet influence reaches. In Korea, Chinese volunteers use PTRD rifles against American armor. M4 Shermans have vulnerable side armor, 38 millimeters. The PTRD still works, not perfectly, not reliably, but sometimes, and sometimes is enough. Captain William Brophy, U.S. Army captures a PTRD in 1952. He is fascinated by the design. Simple, effective, brutal. He has an idea. What if you kept the frame and bolt but changed the caliber, used .50 BMG instead of 14.5 millimeter? He experiments, creates a hybrid. The result is one of the first large caliber sniper rifles. Not practical for military use yet, but the concept is valid. Years later, weapons like the Barrett M82 will use similar principles. Degtyaryov's idea outlives its original purpose. The cartridge outlives everything. 14.5 by 114 millimeter. Adopted July 16, 1941. Still in use today. KPV heavy machine guns, ZPU anti-aircraft systems, modern anti-material rifles. The round is too useful to abandon. Works in weapons Degtyaryov never imagined. The PTRD itself becomes